There is no sign at the entrance, no public records, no official acknowledgement that anything unusual happens in the remote Nevada desert. And yet, satellite images reveal runways miles long, aircraft no civilian has ever seen, and a security perimeter designed to keep the world out. This is Area 51, the most secretive military facility in America. But the real secrets aren't the aircraft above ground. It's what lies beneath. The base that doesn't exist on paper holds mysteries that go far deeper than experimental flight. For decades, the government has maintained a wall of silence, but fragments of truth have escaped. These fragments paint a picture not of a simple test site, but of a vault, one that holds secrets that could redefine our understanding of technology, history, and our place in the universe. Today, we're not just looking at the base. We're looking for the files they'll never declassify. The story they tell us begins during the Cold War, a necessary facility for developing spy planes like the U-2 and the SR-71 Blackbird. A logical, strategic move in a world of espionage and technological one-upmanship. But the official origin story is a carefully constructed narrative designed to conceal a much deeper, older timeline. Declassified fragments, pieced together from forgotten archives, show temporary structures existed on that same patch of desert as early as the 1940s, years before the Cold War began in earnest, years before the U-2 program was even conceived. Why would a classified site operate before it was officially created? What were they testing or hiding long before the world even knew the base existed? The official history has a beginning, but the land itself has secrets that predate it. Something was happening at Groom Lake that required absolute secrecy, even before the threat of Soviet surveillance became the public justification. The paper trail starts in the 1950s, but the real story begins in the silence of the 1940s. While the government built fences and enforced no-fly zones, the true perimeter was one of information. A wall of denial designed to discredit anyone who saw something they weren't supposed to. Locals living on the edge of the vast Nevada test range began describing lights in the night sky. Silent, hovering lights that could execute maneuvers no conventional aircraft could perform. They moved without sound, accelerated instantaneously, and vanished in the blink of an eye. Airline and military pilots, navigating the skies over the American West, reported unidentified objects that could outmaneuver any known aircraft of the era. These were trained observers, professionals whose careers depended on accurate reporting. Yet their encounters were dismissed, explained away as weather balloons or atmospheric phenomena. Then there were the workers, men and women who passed through the gates of Area 51, sworn to a lifetime of silence. Decades later, speaking anonymously, their stories began to surface. They described underground elevators descending deep into the earth, vast, sealed hangars built to contain something far larger than a spy plane. They spoke of cargo flown in only at night, under the tightest security. The contents were always crated, wrapped, and completely unmarked. Every testimony, from the local rancher to the trained pilot to the base contractor, was officially ignored or denied. Yet they all described the same things: technology that was decades ahead of its time, operating in the skies and hidden deep beneath the desert floor. The consistency of these independent accounts points not to mass hysteria, but to a shared hidden reality. For any historical event, the paper trail is paramount. But what happens when the paper trail is deliberately destroyed? Freedom of Information Act requests for records related to Area 51 are a lesson in institutional stonewalling. Most requests return with a standard, chilling reply: no responsive documents found. It's as if the events never happened. The few documents that are released are a puzzle of black ink. Pages are so heavily redacted that only prepositions and articles remain. Entire paragraphs, pages, and chapters are blacked out, deemed too sensitive for public eyes, even 70 years later. But most disturbing are the gaps. Official logs, flight records, project reports, daily activity summaries are sometimes missing entire weeks or even months. Blocks of time have been surgically removed from history. Why would a simple test base need to erase entire chunks of its own timeline? You redact specifics to protect technology. You don't erase history itself, unless those documents recorded something that could not be explained by conventional technology, something that defied classification because it didn't belong to any known category of military hardware. They aren't just hiding the blueprints of a plane. They are hiding the records of an event. From the fog of secrecy, a few words have slipped through. Leaked internal memos, anonymous tips, and deathbed confessions have given us names, code names for projects that officially don't exist. Project Oxcart, the development of the SR-71, is one of the few that has been declassified. But what about the others? Project Have Blue, the precursor to the F-117 stealth fighter, was another. But the list goes on into far murkier territory. Project Quadrant, Project S-4. These names appear in scattered documents with no official explanation, no budget, and no stated objective. They are ghosts in the machine. One partially redacted memo from the 1980s mentions the analysis of non-conventional flight materials. Another internal report refers to the reverse engineering of retrieved objects. These are not standard military or aeronautical terms. The phrase retrieved objects in particular appears almost nowhere else in military archives. Retrieved from where? From who? These phantom projects, described in cryptic, isolated phrases, suggest a program running in parallel to the known aircraft development. A program dealing with technology that did not originate from any known laboratory or defense contractor. The stories from former contractors paint an even more astonishing picture. They don't just speak of hangars on the surface, but of a sprawling, multi-level facility deep underground, an inverted skyscraper buried beneath the desert. Access, they claim, is restricted by biometric scanners and guarded checkpoints at every level. It's a world built on absolute compartmentalization. These whistleblowers describe floors with no labels, only color codes. Doors that open into vast tunnel systems, allegedly stretching for miles beneath the desert, connecting different parts of the Nevada test and training range. Most compelling are the descriptions of specific rooms. Laboratories where objects were kept under strict, air-controlled isolation. Analysis bays where strange artifacts were meticulously studied. If these claims were simply fabricated, how do different witnesses, men who served decades apart and never met, describe the same impossible architecture, the same security protocols, the same color-coded levels? The consistency suggests they are not inventing a story. They are remembering a place that government still insists does not exist in the way they describe. Long before the stories of underground bases, the primary evidence came from the sky. Radar logs from the 1950s and 60s, many of which remain classified, show objects entering the restricted airspace around Groom Lake at impossible speeds and altitudes. These were not Soviet spy planes. They were solid, tracked objects that defied the laws of physics as we knew them. In response, pilots were scrambled. The best interceptor jets of the day were sent to investigate. In every documented case, they failed. The objects could out-accelerate, out-climb, and out-maneuver anything America's top pilots could fly. The pilot reports are even more startling. They described shapes that didn't match any known aircraft profile. Not planes with wings and tails, but perfect circles. Silent, massive triangles. Some reports even detail craft that appeared to shift their shape mid-flight. These encounters were not treated as trivial. They were logged as serious incursions by unknown craft. But then they were quietly classified at the highest levels and buried in archives, far from public view. They were filed away not as unsolved mysteries, but as inconvenient truths. This brings us to the central question. Decades have passed since the Cold War. The U-2, the SR-71, and even the F-117 stealth fighter, the original justifications for Area 51 secrecy, have all been declassified and put in museums. The programs they were part of are now public knowledge. So why are Area 51's most important files from that same era still sealed? Why are they restricted indefinitely, protected by a level of secrecy that surpasses even nuclear weapons programs? Technology testing alone does not require this. Protecting the design of a 70-year-old spy plane does not justify this level of ongoing, active concealment. Something inside that base, whether it's recovered material, a revolutionary experimental propulsion system, or historical evidence of an event we were never told about, remains too destabilizing for public release. The continued secrecy is not about protecting the past. It's about controlling the future. And so we are left with the final question, the one that hangs over the Nevada desert like a silent, hovering light. What does Area 51 protect so fiercely that no government, decade after decade, will acknowledge it? A weapon more powerful than anything we can imagine? A technology that would render our entire global economy obsolete overnight? Or is it an object? Something retrieved from a crash site in the desert, an artifact that proves, once and for all, that we are not alone. The base isn't the secret. The base is the lock. The secret is what's inside the vault. Until the day those files are finally opened, the truth remains buried beneath the desert. If you're ready to uncover more Forbidden's archives, subscribe to the True Story Files, and tell us in the comments what you believe is hidden inside Area 51.